Okay, Mr. Captain Compton, you're gonna have to reel it back with the terminology here. What in the heck in tarnation is a universally implicit precognitive purpose? That's right, everyone. In this episode, we're going to be having a little bit of fun with language, as many philosophers want to do. This is a little fun term that we can use just to get some creative juices flowing and some different perspectives of perspective in. What I mean is to take our overthinking cognitive selves out of the picture and pursue a more universally implicit purpose in life. A precognitive, universally implicit purpose. Now, others have used the term preconscious when describing activity in the brain and outside of the brain as well. Of course, there's a distinction to be made between purpose in life and one's meaning in life, or what life means. So what can we define as the meaning of life? It's only the biggest question ever, and one that we're not going to answer in this episode. We'll discuss meaning more later with a survey of opinions from some of the world's greatest minds interviewed on exactly this question. For now, let's focus on humanity's purpose and the individual purpose, and how that overlaps with the sense of meaning in life. What we're really talking about here is logotherapy, an established psychotherapeutic discipline made by Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps as well as out of it. To Frankl, it was essential for the individual to establish a well-examined sense of meaning and purpose, agency and virtues to be able to balance their life. And we promote these messages in public education, these ways of differently looking at the world. The universe begins to find ways to awaken to itself. This is essentially equating the onset of open-mindedness to a seed for awakening and universal introspection. Now, I'm not saying that the amount of the individual perception systems awakening to the truth of their physical natures somehow adds up to the exact amount that the universe can perceive itself by, and I'm also not saying that that number increases when we consider consciousness to be fundamental, or a panpsychist or distributed consciousness perspective, though it is fun to think this way as well. Again, this is much more a thought experiment than it is a life framework. We are the connoisseurs of universal introspection, the autobiographers of the cosmos, guardians of the galaxy. We are like gondoliers for the universe, on a tour through its various constructions, and like a gallery host for its many creations. Now, from a life philosophy perspective, I would say that when the individual embodies these notions and gain this knowledge, that they can provide a better show for the universe and perhaps have a duty to do so, and to help others do so, to find life purpose and meaning in life. And when I say show here, I mean like be a better player on the stage of life, as Shakespeare would have put it. When we pass the story of life down through the ages and across the globe via our various means of technological communication, we help the universe awaken to itself progressively more, and learn about itself, and spread its knowledge amongst more perceiving entities. Or at least that's one of the most fun ways of looking at things. Given that one of the main things that people say when they ask about what is their purpose in life is to preserve the species and eventually the solar system, and eventually protect the galaxy. We are guardians of the galaxy. So let's ask the question like this. What is our duty, and how can we get the most enjoyment out of fulfilling that duty in life? Recall that something fulfilling its designed purpose is the commonly held definition for the good, the type of good that we search for in the pursuit of the true, the good, and the beautiful. Is this sense of duty based in something physical? Is it based in a duty to a religion, a duty to your boss or your occupation? Or is it a duty to your personal endeavors and your goals in life? Is it a duty to family and relationships and virtues and friends and things like these? As long as they're related to your goals, and your goals are well checked in by the rules of life, like the simple one, the golden rule, do unto others as you have them do unto you, and do no harm, psychologically or mentally, to others, then your goals should be fine. So if we're taking this as a universal ideology, we can proceed from this base rule of do no harm, because getting the most out of life, and awakening one's potential, and awakening the universe itself, and awakening to the universe in oneself, all of these are codependent. Remember, going forward, when I say awakening to the universe within oneself, that within is not regarding to the woo as much as it is regarding to the microcosmos within us. Across the vast expanse of cosmic evolution, the universe may only ever glean various glimpses of itself. This is true for all cosmic, alien, or complex organic life, the human organism as an individual, and the collective of potential consciousnesses that constitute the human structure, our cell colonies and bacteria, etc. Now, extended to a fourth universe, we can imagine the human species as a colony, working together to introspect and improve itself as well. Now, we must accept that the universe within and without us can only be improved, embodied, and extended to a certain degree. There are limited resources, just as there are limited organic perceiving mechanisms. Because of this, and because we've learned this, these perspectives seem that much more precious, and implicitly that much more necessary to share. Life is precious, and we want to expand and preserve it to the best of our ability. Before the eventual heat death of the universe, it would be nice if the human race helped it expand its ability to appreciate itself. If we want to embody this largest of all possible life journeys, the overall experience of the universe itself, we can remind ourselves that we are largely the story that we tell. As we discussed before, the way we communicate, what we decide and don't decide to share, affects others. The parts we do share, they absorb that part of us, and carrying a part of us with them, and possibly teaching those shared experiences, values, and lessons to their children or others as well. When we teach in public schools, we're having a massive impact on the story that people can come to tell about themselves. When we teach these ideas like universal embodiment or just general self-awareness and introspection techniques, we present opportunities for the story that the universe tells about itself to continue and expand across the globe and beyond. Microcosmos, macrocosmos, and middle cosmos. What am I talking about? Our ability to experience this universal embodiment will always be restricted by our Umwelt. It will always be limited to the extent of our capacity to imagine and embody concepts. We can only think so far ahead in time, imagine so many years in the future, and fathom limited but varied scales of microbiology and galaxy-sized distances. We reside in the middle cosmos, so we are left to ask ourselves, what is the best way to expand out into the macrocosmos and deep into the microcosmos? Well, we can approach from a phenomenological mode and a more physical, empirical mode, but both work reciprocally to enhance each other. Let me explain. We expand our imagination, our phenomenological experience of the world, and by some definitions, our perspective, via watching nature documentaries, listening to physics lectures, or reading philosophy books. And when we do so, we're enhancing our capacity to feel and relate to the universe that we reside in, on a more personal level. Alternatively, when we study or use microscopes or computers or microengineering, we're using hands-on, direct alteration of the senses in order to maximize our relation to the object or entity that we're studying, expanding our relatability to the thing that we're examining. We're establishing an optimal grip via salience landscape expansion and awareness of our agent-arena relationship. We expand on our Umwelt, which we did a video on, you can find here. We're attempting to come to an understanding with another physical object or entity in the universe, another perhaps more rudimentary form of universal introspection system, if you follow the panpsychist or hierarchical cognition persuasion. We're relating to the universe on a sensory perceptive level, and from this perspective, we feel as well. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty here, I just want to caveat that this is part of a multi-part series on a personal philosophy and therapy technique of mine called universal embodiment. This is not nearly as pragmatic as the other videos on my channel that are much more empirical and based in real science, so you can feel free to skip ahead to other sections in this video series. I just want to get these recorded before expanding on the series, where we'll be examining the connections and blind spots between the fields of neuroscience and psychology and philosophy, biology and cognitive science and phenomenology, because this idea of universal embodiment will necessarily arise in these future videos. Anyways, back to the video. To begin, let's look at the microcosmos at one of the smallest levels, the cell. Our cells anthropologically seek to bond in order to fulfill their purposes, and we can emulate them by seeking to bond with others in order to fulfill our own. They work together, distributing energy sources and ideas, and their efforts are distributed in efficient and resourceful ways. Now, of course, this idea has been long extrapolated and taken far off the rails by Marxist extremism and all-for-one controlled political economic systems, and that certainly is not what I mean to insinuate that we should pursue. I mean to insinuate that we should indeed be picky and choosy with nature, because that's what nature does with itself. We can choose to deny or improve upon certain genetic proclivities and restrictions, which we already do with glasses and cell phones, the thing that I'm recording this on right now. We should emulate our cellular union and think of ourselves as a team with many shared goals that work together to preserve the overall organic host that we live upon. Our cells want the best for the organic host they reside in, as do our genes, and we should want the best for the semi-living planet and ecosystem that we reside in. We want this from a psychological perspective as well. Recall the rat park experiment, and also just simple logic. People tend to enjoy life more and be more motivated in beautiful environments as opposed to the more congested and complicated and polluted environments and unfair environments. So we want to emulate our cellular connections, and we can do so better by watching educational entertainment on YouTube, or lectures by Robert Sapolsky, the Carl Sagan of biology, or a bunch of other more modern-day applications and techniques that we'll mention later. Now, on the middle cosmos scale, many would say that we have a biological imperative to survive and to reproduce. This would apply on the macro level as well, as we're imitating the imperatives of our genes. The desire of our cellular instruction systems are to continue doing what they're doing inside of future hosts. So to fulfill this prerogative, we need to reproduce. There are parallels to this found in Michael Levin's cell morphogenesis and blobology, neurochemistry, and neurophenomenology as well. Clearly, an awakening universe, realizing the fragility of its constructed frame and the flimsiness and risk involved in using its tender, squishy biological inhabitants, it would commit to nurturing its needy body with healthy food and proper exercise, such that it can be a good father and make good future decisions for the family fueled by a healthy lifestyle. And of course the same goes for the mother, especially during pregnancy. This awakened universe in a body would realize its potential to reason, and it would make it such that the species could continue to reduce suffering and promote human flourishing as well. With its perspective constantly as wide as the entire universe and as considerate of the smallest fly, the awakened universe in human would constantly be doing salience landscaping, continuously seeking Merleau-Ponty's optimal grip, continuously expanding outward and zooming inward to examine each situation and interaction and thought from the widest perspectives possible. Now, zooming out to the grand macro scale, we can think of ourselves as the autobiographers of the universe. Many scientists have emphasized such notions when asked. Many say that we are the great recorders of the universe. Until humans came along, as far as we know, none of the events in the universe have ever been recorded. The universe introspects upon itself at the physical scale as well. As if we're a doctor controlling a nanobot exploring the insides of a human's anatomy, we begin to send probes out and put ourselves into suits and blast out into the hard vacuum of space. We explore the geology of other planets and the nebula of exploded stars. We observe gargantuan displays of gravitational and electromagnetic forces, and apply mathematics to the universe's physics to relate to it even further. We then translate the language of the universe into human metaphor, relating concepts like space-time dilation to slices of a loaf of bread and other such metaphors. Remember, we are a storytelling species. This is what works best for us in order to form understanding. We use variation in examples and metaphors. So we can think of this as being how the universe comes to an understanding and spreads that understanding of itself, via some physicists and cosmologists that have spent years forming a strong analysis and relationship with their Monomath perception of the universe, such that they can translate that to the masses via metaphor and story. In this way of thinking, folks like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Brian Greene are like messengers of God, translating the scriptures of the skies, translating math, the great language of the universe. And the same, of course, is true for the biologist and the philosopher and the chemist and the health expert and the nutritionist, and for anyone that garners a sense of expertise on any subject, by which they may later communicate and possibly expand someone's perspective on their life. Now, since we are given two means of forging purpose in our lives, to forge our own or to look with the consensus, then ideally we would strive to blend the two cohesively. From the consensus perspective, the more people that agree on a singular answer, the closer we feel like we're getting to a universal definition of purpose, at least within our species in this time, here and now. Now this of course could be wildly off-kilter with actual reality. We can only see a sliver of the light spectrum, and we can only hear 20 to 20,000 hertz of the sound spectrum. But what we're going for is a type of purpose that involves preserving all forms of life, and is considerate of as many things that one can be considerate of, taken from as many perspectives as possible. We want to derive meaning from the universe itself as it applies to our sensory motor experiences, not particularly that of alien life, but it wouldn't hurt to imagine what it's like for them as well. It is beneficial to speculate, but it does tend to return back to our solar-centric perspective here. Our purpose should probably be bound at least within the world that we inhabit, or the worlds we plan to inhabit in this solar system, at least for now. We seem to be a long way off from cracking dimensions or warping reality, creating wormhole travel, or creating artificial general intelligence, or making time machines, but perhaps the innovations required to accomplish those feats would tear us so far away from our ability to sustain ourselves that they would end the species altogether. Just look at how compromising of a factor the invention of the atom bomb has become. When questioned, many people seem to find purpose and meaning in the preservation of our species. When asked how they describe a meaningful life or a meaningful pursuit, they often will describe taking up goals that concern helping or positively affecting the species on a large scale, or a small scale. Now, if we are indeed the only intelligent life in the cosmos, then I would imagine the universe would want us to expand out into it and propagate the species as much as possible, to preserve these experiencers/expressors, these universal introspection vessels. And this notion could be seen to reside outside of our current cognitive constraints. Even if we want to stay on this planet, the universe wants us to expand out. We can also look at this another way. We can say we want to seek consensus and form a system of mutual understanding across the species. The microcosmos, the middle cosmos, and the macrocosmos. Now these are involved in all three types of universal embodiment that I'm trying to portray here. Firstly, when I refer to something as universal with a capital U, as in universal forgiveness or universal gratitude, I mean this in the following three ways. Again, do bear with the romanticism here. I'm attempting at prioritizing the logos over the ethos and the pathos. and it's a little tricky. 1. From the micro, macro, and middle cosmic perspective, as in this awakening, realizing a universe in a human vessel. This is a new kind of meaning and purpose, offering us a purpose to explore. One can extrapolate their ideas and expand their perspective through the expansion of their Umwelt, as well as philosophy at these 3 levels. Embodying and deeply contemplating the complexities of the microscopic world, contemplating and balancing the propagation of our middle-sized world, with the interactions of people and organic life, and contemplating the expanses and forces of the macrocosmos that surround us, and geology and exogeology and large-scale physics and things like that. This ideally can subsequently alter one's perspective on life, and even their entire personality. Now, the second way I mean universal with a capital U is the way that we typically use the word universal, as in universally applicable to all humans, or like a user interface that is applicable to as many people as possible. More on this later. And 3, and we can look at the capital U from the deterministic causal perspective, which we've already talked about in detail so far. We are universally connected metaphorically and quite literally through the laws and physics of the universe. We are bound by space and time, so sometimes interpreted as reductionist, sometimes as all-encompassing. The way I usually refer to determinism is the way Spinoza would explain it. Everything in the universe is connected via causal chains going all the way back to the Big Bang. This means that the choices we make, or the appearance of the choices that we make, have butterfly effects down the line. Everything we do and don't do affects something else. This goes all the way down to the furthest steps of microscopic conceptions as well. The cutting edge of cognitive science and neuroscience and phenomenology are all converging on this idea that everything that we consider a boundary, like our skin or our cell walls, is actually a continuum of electrical and physical and chemical trade-offs that are happening at a very small level, and physical exchanges happening at nearly inconceivable scales and rates. We are connected, affecting and affected by everything in the universe, universally. Now, a 4th interpretation of universal with a capital U could also be God, as lived through this universe in a human vessel form. This brings about the notions of the idea anagogia, or God living through us, and things like that. But I don't really want to get into that because the way I would describe it is exactly how Spinoza described God in his Ethics. Anyways, I hope this section made sense. Let me know what you think in the comments. Looking through the eyes of the universe. Now, this idea of distributed cognition is reminiscent of Schopenhauer's quote describing emergent consciousness, where he says, the great eye of nature that looks out through every creature, which is a beautiful concept. We are all connected, and we are all sharing in this journey of allowing the universe to explore itself through the eyes of every creature. And we can look at how all of those creatures come to see now. Like, now we're at the time when we're studying the vision systems of other creatures, and we can like replicate that and represent that on screen. The great eye of nature that looks out through every creature. This is a clear nod to causality, and to the patterns that our genetics and distributed consciousness perceive through. Now, when we make eye contact with another human, we're witnessing the primary means of that version of the universe experiencing itself, its most prominent perception tool, while that other person witnesses the same in us. We are peering into the universe's most effective means of orienting and understanding, exterocepting, and explaining itself. Or if you like, our most human means of understanding ourselves and our environment, through the eyes. When we just glance at people, we receive little blips of connection that we may not realize are actually significant. Now, when we go to listen to a conversation or a song or whatever, we're listening with our second most prominent tool, our ears, and we are listening through the other means by which the universe orients itself in a human form, through cognition. Our ability to present and absorb ideas and notions. And this goes to a whole nother level with neurobiology, with the way that we orient ourselves based on how we hear the world. We form tonotopic maps from a very early age. This is why it's important not to let your children listen to white noise, or don't play white noise for your baby, because that disrupts their ability to distinguish different tones, and that can mess up their ability to become musicians later, and also the way they form these tonotopic maps. Just a fair warning on that. For those suffering from ADHD and autism, and those that struggle to maintain eye contact, this can be viewed as another evolutionary and universal advantage. The judgment and prejudging parts of our mind are very refined at this point, and they can become overworked when we're making eye contact. So many people literally have to look away to listen properly, and this is something that I had to learn for myself. I had to reteach myself how to make proper eye contact. Viewers can access the Polymath Park Patreon here. Programs like this exist solely by donation, so feel free to contribute whatever you feel this video is worthy. Anything's appreciated.